You are watching a man in handcuffs. January 2026. Nicolás Maduro sits in a Brooklyn holding cell. The cameras show the arrest. They show the Delta Force operation. They show the diplomatic choreography. They do not show what actually brought him here. This was not decided in January 2026. It was decided in 2014, when oil fell to $50 a barrel and kept falling. It was decided when production lines stopped, when currency turned into confetti, when generals began calculating whether loyalty or survival paid better. The handcuffs you saw on television were forged by economics, not ideology, not democracy, but economics. This is how you dismantle the wealthiest nation in South America in 12 years. Billion barrels of oil into famine. This is what happens when you refuse to accept that arithmetic does not negotiate. Venezuela did not collapse suddenly. It bled out one rational decision at a time. You start with a blessing that becomes a trap. Venezuela sits on more proven oil reserves than any country on earth. More than Saudi Arabia. More than Russia. Nearly 300 billion barrels beneath the soil. This should have made every Venezuelan comfortable for life. Instead, it created dependency. When you pump this much oil and sell it for this much money, something happens to your economy. Your currency strengthens. Imports become cheap. Why grow food when you can buy it cheaper from Colombia? Why build factories when China ships you everything for pennies? You stop producing. Agriculture shrinks. Manufacturing disappears. The only industry that matters becomes extraction. Economists call this Dutch disease. Venezuela called it prosperity. It worked. As long as oil stayed above $100 a barrel, as long as the checks kept clearing, as long as nobody looked at the foundation. But the foundation was already cracking. In 2002 and 2003, the government fired 18,000 workers from PDVSA, the state oil company. Not because of incompetence, because of a strike. Engineers, geologists, technicians who understood how to maintain offshore platforms and high-pressure extraction systems. They were replaced with political loyalists, people who could chant slogans but could not read a pressure gauge. People who knew how to attend rallies, but not how to prevent pipeline corrosion. By the time Maduro took office in 2013, the infrastructure was decaying. Pumps rusted. Pipelines leaked. Refineries ran below capacity. But he needed the money. So instead of repairing the equipment, he raided the company. PDVSA became a cash machine. Need to pay the military? Take it from the oil budget. Need to fund social programs? Take it from maintenance. The wells kept pumping. Until they didn't. In 2013, Venezuela produced 2.8 million barrels per day. By 2020, production had collapsed to just 337,000 barrels per day. Not because the oil disappeared, because the machinery broke, because the expertise was gone, because every dollar that should have gone into repairs went somewhere else. You cannot run an oil industry without engineers. You cannot maintain equipment with ideology. The wells did not run dry. They were abandoned. This is the first mechanism. Production collapse. When your only source of income stops functioning, you have two choices. Cut spending or find another source of revenue. Maduro found another source. He printed it. 2014. Oil prices crash from $110 to $50 per barrel. The government has bills to pay. Salaries, subsidies, debt payments, military loyalty. A normal government raises taxes or reduces spending. Maduro looked at the central bank and gave an order. Print. This is not ordinary inflation. This is velocity that breaks all known limits. 2013. Inflation at 56%. 2016. 254%. 2018. 130,000%. Let me translate this number. You wake up Monday. 1 egg costs 1 bolivar. You wake up Friday. 1 egg costs 3,000 bolivars. Prices did not change by the month. They changed by the hour. Restaurants stopped printing menus with prices. The numbers would be wrong by the time the food arrived. Workers spent their paychecks the moment they received them, not on luxuries, on anything. Rice, soap, tires. Because holding cash was like holding ice in the sun. The bolivar became worthless. People used the bills as napkins. They wove them into bags. The craft value exceeded the face value. This is the second mechanism. Currency destruction. An economy runs on trust. Trust that money today will be worth something tomorrow. Trust that if you sell something now, you can buy something later. Maduro deleted that trust. Every transaction became a panic. Every payment became a gamble. The economy did not slow down. It disintegrated. When money dies, prices become meaningless. When prices become meaningless, markets stop working. Maduro's response was not to stop printing money. His response was to fix prices by force. He sent the military into stores. "Sell this television for $10, the soldiers said. So the shopkeepers sold the television for $10. Then he had no money to buy another television to sell. The shelves emptied, not because of shortages, but because of arithmetic. When you force someone to sell below cost, they stop selling. This is the third mechanism. Price destruction. Prices are information. They tell producers what to make. They tell consumers what is scarce. When you destroy prices, you destroy coordination. Venezuela did not have a food crisis because of drought. It had a food crisis because the government made it illegal to charge what food cost. Farmers stopped planting. Importers stopped importing. Supermarkets closed. The country with oil wealth faced famine. By 2016, 75% of the population reported losing weight. Not from exercise, from hunger. The government created a solution. The clap boxes. Subsidized food packages delivered to households. On paper, humanitarian relief. In practice, political control. If you protested, no box for you. If you criticized the government, no box for you. If your neighborhood voted opposition, the delivery truck might break down. Food became a political weapon. But the mechanism goes deeper. The government was importing this food at inflated prices through connected companies. Food that cost $50 was billed at $200. The difference vanished into private accounts. The people starved, the elites got rich. This is the fourth mechanism. Scarcity as leverage. When you control who eats, you control who obeys. By 2017, the economy was a corpse. What do you do when you have destroyed every productive system? You extract what remains. Venezuela started selling gold, not through official channels, through illegal mining operations in the Arco Minero, a region rich in minerals. Criminal groups moved in. They used mercury to separate gold from dirt. The mercury poisoned rivers. Indigenous communities lost their water. The gold flowed out on private planes to Turkey, the UAE, Iran. No receipts, no taxes. Cash delivered directly to the presidential palace. This is the fifth mechanism. Criminalization of the state. When legal revenue disappears, the government becomes a criminal enterprise. And Venezuela went further. The military, led by high-ranking generals wearing sun insignias, began facilitating drug trafficking. They controlled the airspace. They controlled the ports. They controlled the radar. Drug cartels no longer needed to hide from the police. They were the police. The United States noticed. In 2020, the Department of Justice indicted Maduro on narcotics charges. A $15 million bounty was placed on his head. Think about what this does to loyalty. Every general who walked into a room with Maduro had to calculate, protect him and share the declining loot, or turn him in and collect $15 million. When the money runs out, loyalty becomes a price comparison. The walls were closing. But Maduro had one escape route. In 2023, the Barbados Agreement offered a deal. Hold a free election in July 2024. If you do, sanctions ease. Oil can flow again. The economy can breathe. July 28, 2024. The opposition candidate won, not narrowly, decisively. Exit polls showed a 70-30 split. Maduro had a choice: accept the result, negotiate an exit, let the country recover, or steal the election. Keep power, seal the economic coffin. He chose power. He declared himself the winner. He refused to release voting tallies. He arrested protesters. The United States reimposed full sanctions immediately. The foreign investors left. This is the sixth mechanism, the opportunity cost of ego. He was handed a key to unlock sanctions. He threw it away. From that moment, every general knew the truth. As long as Maduro held power, Venezuela would never make money again. He was not the solution. He was the problem. By late 2025, the payments to the military started arriving late, or lighter than expected. The gold mines were being squeezed. The drug routes were being intercepted. The cash was running out. Loyalty is not infinite. Loyalty is a transaction. When the transaction stops paying, the loyalty stops. January 3rd, 2026. The Delta Force operation landed. They did not face a fanatical defense. They faced a regime that had already collapsed internally. The economic structure was hollow. One push, and it fell. Maduro sits in a Brooklyn cell today, not because of ideology, not because of democracy, because the money ran out. This is what happens when you treat an economy like an ATM, when you fire the people who know how to maintain your only revenue source, when you print currency until it becomes worthless, when you destroy prices and replace markets with force. Venezuela lost 80% of its GDP in a decade. Over 90% of the population fell into poverty. 8 million people, 1/4 of the nation, fled the country. The system did not collapse suddenly. It weakened step by step through rational decisions. Fire the engineers because they protest. Print money because spending must continue. Fix prices because markets resist. Control food to control people. Each decision made sense in the moment. Each decision moved the collapse one step closer. The arrest in January 2026 was not the beginning of the end. It was the final confirmation of a verdict the economy had already delivered. The question is not whether Maduro destroyed Venezuela. He did. The question is whether the next leader will understand what the first one refused to accept. You cannot print wealth. You cannot decree prosperity. You cannot sustain power when the foundation underneath you has turned to dust. Economics does not negotiate. It does not wait. It simply subtracts until nothing remains.